Welcome to GibSams Wellbeing at Work podcasts. These are a series of conversations which aim to bring new ideas and perspectives around wellbeing at work. GibSams is a Gibraltar registered charity providing free helpline and chat services for those who may be suffering emotional distress and championing a culture of wellbeing for all. I'm Mary Lou, the founder and chairman of GibSams, and my fellow trustee, Kerstin, will be chatting to the recipients of our Corporate Wellbeing Awards who have very kindly agreed to share how implementing wellbeing measures has resulted in benefits for both employees and their organizations. Enjoy.
Today we are speaking to Richard Ullger, Darrien Ramos and Thomas Tunbridge from the Royal Gibraltar Police. And we're talking to them about their very successful wellbeing strategy that has won them the GibSams Wellbeing Award back in 2020. And my name is Kerstin Andlaw, and I have the absolute pleasure to host this podcast and to speak to Richard, Darrien and Thomas today. So without further ado, I think one of the first things I'm really curious about, and perhaps the listeners are also, is what inspired you? What inspired the RGP to create and to implement a wellbeing strategy and plan?
Well, I think from the outset, I think as an organisation, we were very good at looking after our people for our physical health. However, as an organisation, I think we were lacking, and we didn't have those processes in place to be able to deal with better with matters about mental health and well-being. So what we decided to do is to be mature about it and to make it part and parcel of our business by understanding both the importance of the physical side of well-being, but also very importantly the mental well-being side of things. And what we did is we implemented a wellbeing strategy. And this was a 3-year strategy, and the aim of the strategy was to work with our staff and integrate a wellbeing into our day-to-day activities. So really make it part and parcel of absolutely everything we did, whether it be police officers or our very, very important support staff who support the police, the policing element of Gibraltar. So everyone was important here. And what the strategy does it embeds the positive physical, mental and social health and well-being behaviours that really run the force for us. So, and what we did is we recognised that well-being was principal for us as a good employer, and it allowed us to better engage with our individuals with purpose. And what we wanted to make sure is that our people felt valued in our organisation, and that when they had any issues, whether it been through physical or mental issues, that we as an organisation cared about them and supported them in whatever way we could. So we built upon this wellbeing strategy, and the strategy has a number of strands, but very important to those strands were the wellbeing champions, and the wellbeing champions are essential in this regard because they are the ones that make absolutely everything, make everything tick and create an environment to promote a state of contentment within the organisation and allow people, the employees of the organisation, to flourish and achieve their full potential. So without our champions, which I'll allow both Tom and Darrien to speak and answer, but without them we wouldn't have been as successful as we are. So it's credit to them both. And then aligned to that, what we've done is we've adopted the UK's College of Policing Blue Light Wellbeing Framework, which allows us to have an overarching focus on creating a positive working environment. So a lot of hard work going into having that support framework in place to be able to do everything we do.
Wow, fantastic. And I think I can see Thomas and Darrien might want to jump in already, which is great.
Yeah, essentially the Commissioner has covered a lot of what the strategy entails. It is about creating that culture and that mindset, which is also linked to leadership within the organization. The strategy itself is a 3-year plan, and it covers various areas. As the Commissioner alluded to, the Wellbeing Champions are key to its success. They are the ambassadors of the strategy. We have, I believe, Tom might correct me, but around 15 Wellbeing Champions, different ranks and police and support staff. We have trained them. They aren't trained counsellors. The function is primarily to signpost staff and direct them, basically have that initial conversation, which in some cases might resolve the welfare well-being issue. In other cases, if they need to be referred to, in some cases, Ocean Views, we've got an excellent working relationship with them. Also with the government well-being team as well. So it's about signposting, about encouraging that conversation, encouraging communication, which is crucial for the success really of a strategy like this.
Mm-hmm. What I'm really hearing loud and clear is that the way we treat our physical health is important, but to treat our mental health and our mental well-being just with as much attention and importance is something I'm really hearing loud and clear from what you guys are saying.
Yeah, going on that point and taking us back to the beginning again, where you was asking about what drove us to take this on and move this strategy forward. I think it's really important, and I'd like to get across to listeners that the RGP, the police in Gibraltar, we all know Gibraltar's a safe place. We know our crime profile of our crime isn't the same as a London or a New York or something like that. But that's not to say that our officers don't deal with traumatic incidents. They do, and more regularly, I think, than the general public care to imagine. And all these traumatic incidents, our officers have attended scenes of murder, our officers have attended horrific scenes of suicides, horrific traffic accidents, fatals. We regularly attend domestic abuse incidents which result in injuries. We have a team that deals with child sexual crime and things like that. So there are a lot of traumatic incidents that our officers deal with. And culturally, going back to what the Commissioner was mentioning, that we had this, maybe it's a macho cultural situation whereby traditionally it was get on with it, have a stiff upper lip and just keep going. And as an organisation, as a male-oriented organisation, it was a question of just keep doing it. And I believe the Commissioner and both myself have experienced these kind of attitudes in the 20-odd years or more that we've been in the police. But that doesn't make them the right attitudes. And Darrien mentioned the issues of changing cultures, and the Commissioner mentioned things like that as well. And it's about creating a strategy that allows people to be able to feel comfortable enough to talk about these traumatic incidents and to be able to move forward and to operate successfully within the police and within your career, and then even outside of your police life, when you take your work life into your home life. That's not an easy thing to do. We think it's easy to switch off. It's not easy to switch off when you've attended a fatal traffic accident and you've seen a teenager dead on the side of the road. That's the reality of some of the situations we deal with. I say that because that's the situation I've dealt with. And then you grow up, you have your own teenage kids, and you think these are hard situations. So it's putting the culture in where people feel comfortable enough to come forward and talk. And like Darrien said, our wellbeing champions are there at the forefront. Maybe just talking to a colleague is enough. And maybe that gives you enough peace of mind that there are people there supporting you. But that's not always the case. Grief and trauma affects everyone very differently. So through the strategy, we were able to put in place the referral system that Darrien mentioned in relation to having counsellors. We can send people to Ocean Village, or even the wellbeing team through the government that supports us as well. And depending on the level of the person's own mental health situation they may be in, we now at least have varying levels we can send people to and help them through. And at the end of the day, it's about making people want to talk, making people realize that talking is the right thing to do. Swallowing it up is not going to work. Regularly, that makes things worse. And having the systems in place to allow them to do that.
Thank you. I mean, I'm really curious because I've heard it from all of you now, the word strategy and the word culture. And so strategy, you know, we're looking at how we're approaching something and the plan and the systems that are in place. But then there is the culture that is created through that strategy, that culture of speaking about it, that culture of, you know, being able to process and being able to take care of our mental well-being as well as the physical. And so I'm really curious, and this might be really interesting for some of the listeners, is what are some of the things that are part of your strategy, part of your approach, that is really helping to build this culture?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Culture is massive here, and changing culture is very, very difficult. But I think we've been so fortunate that the Wellbeing Committee, the Wellbeing Matters Committee, and the champions have done such a sterling job in promoting it, simply because they've been pushing out constantly the importance of well-being in our organisation. And going back to what Darrien said earlier on about leadership is key here, because if our people do not see that there's leadership buying, people won't have any faith in the Wellbeing Committee or the Wellbeing Champions or the strategy. So one of the things that we did recently was we undertook a leadership course for our sergeants, our inspectors, and we're going to enhance that by further delivering a leadership course to our chief inspectors and our superintendents, and capture the whole raft of management in the organisation, including the support staff. And what we have done is we've done a leadership course which incorporates everything about well-being. And one of the things that we've already seen is that our middle managers, when they've dealt with critical incidents, like Tom alluded to earlier about serious traffic accidents or death, what have you, we're having our people debriefing and talking about those sensitive matters that may affect us. Whereas before, maybe even as far down as 2-3 years ago, maybe we wouldn't have done that because we were too macho to do it. And what we're trying to promote today is it's good to talk, it's important to talk, and it's important to address those issues and have the framework in place to be able to help those people who need further help. And Tom and both Darrien have alluded to the fact that we've got this excellent working partnership with different partners, so we can refer people to have that extra help, because it is key to be able to change the culture. It is key that there is faith in the strategy. It hasn't been easy, but what we've had to do as well is change ourselves. So it's not only about the rank and file or our support staff, but it's the leaders as well. And I think if it had buy-in from the very, very top. So from my position, from my predecessor to myself and to everyone else that is trying to ensure that the strategy is embedded in the organisation, it is important that everyone buys into it.
Yeah, it's wonderful to hear, because what I'm hearing is that this culture is growing and evolving, and it's like its own microorganism that is part of who we are as people and how we behave, how we interact, how the whole system works, because it's human beings that are leading it.
Correct. And I think the other important side of things as well is bringing people back to work when they've had a period of absence and supporting them. So whereas before people at times used to go on and be on sick leave for an extended period of time, what we're trying to do is bring them back to work quicker, accommodate their needs for a time where they can rehabilitate, and then they can go back out to frontline policing again or wherever they're deployed. So what effectively it does, it reduces your sickness level, it increases your happiness in the workforce, and again, credit to the Wellbeing Matters Committee and the champions, whereas before the Royal Gibraltar Police used to have a sickness rate of anything between 7, 9, 11%. We're hitting anything between 2, 3, 4% at the moment, which is excellent, particularly coming out of the current COVID impact we had recently.
Wow, that is quite a huge difference, and fantastic that has been able to be measured, and you can track it back, because often there is this idea of, well, well-being is just the fluffy stuff, but actually there is real measurable changes for the organization.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we've implemented, in terms of those return to work, we've implemented return to work discussions. So having those conversations when staff come back, which is essential, really. But in particular, when you're dealing with some cases of long-term sickness, and also to reintroduce them back to work. There may be changes during the period of absence, which the staff need to be appraised of, etc. We've also introduced wellbeing action plans, which can either be requested by the officer or done routinely. So, and all of this is confidential. So confidentiality is also key to the success of this strategy, if we want to encourage those conversations and people to be open and frank in those discussions.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Part of the strategy, you're asking what kind of detail was there in the strategy and what things we were doing to build on those thoughts, that 3-year strategy. The return to work discussion is an important part of that, and so is the wellbeing action plan. But these are all part of our sickness management. And again, I think we go back to a cultural situation whereby many years ago, if you told somebody I have a sickness management system, the thought goes to the whole, oh, you're trying to check up on me, or why are you doing that? You don't believe I'm really sick. And it really is nothing to do with that. Having a sickness management process, and what you were saying at the beginning, mentioning before about other companies maybe having this in place, is about what the Commissioner says. It's about not letting people fall through the gaps, not letting somebody go off sick 3 or 4 times with a minor ailment for a day, but really there's something behind that. And really what they want to do is talk, but there's no process to talk. They don't feel comfortable to talk. That's where the Wellbeing Champions comes in, where our leadership comes in from our line managers, where you may have sickness for one reason, but it's really an underlying fact. The underlying factor is the real reason they're off, and that's just a symptom. And it's about having that openness and that culture to be able to get people to talk through our sickness management systems. So we identify if there's a pattern. If somebody's going off sick every week or whatever in a particular pattern, it may not be because they're pulling a fast one. It may be there may be something behind that. And by having the sickness management plan, you can reach out to those people and see if they're in need. Sometimes there won't be a need, but there are times, and we have had these situations where by reaching out, that person's been unwilling to talk, that person's been suffering in silence. And by Wellbeing Champion approaching them, only because we've noticed patterns through our sickness management, have we been able to get that person the help they needed.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, a metaphor that comes to my mind is, we often, as we did when we came onto the call, we said, "How are you?" And we often, ask these things, but don't really. It's not really open for being completely honest by actually putting something in place where you ask and you ask again and you keep checking and you keep really opening that door. It really allows people to metaphorically walk through it.
That's a very important point. Darrien mentioned before that our wellbeing champions had some training. We undertook 3 days of mental welfare first aid training, which for the wellbeing champions who did it was a great eye opener, and really helped us in understanding what our role was as wellbeing champions. And that openness and asking the right questions is the way to go. It's not to hide behind and just ask the question, "Are you okay?" And accept, "Yeah, I'm fine," because we always say, "Oh, I'm fine," and that's it. And we just leave it at that. It's to approach people and be open about mental health. The person who says, "I'm fine," and they really are fine, not an issue. But the person who has a underlying mental health issue that they want to talk about, but don't, for whatever reason, fear, embarrassment, whatever it is, they're not going to be upset because you ask them because you come out there and ask them. It may even be the conversation that saves them. Give you one very quick example. I spoke to somebody this weekend alone, and I said, I made the words, "Are you going to be okay?" And when they came out of my mouth, I realized I know the answer to that question, and they know the answer to that question. They're not okay. It's as simple as that. They're not okay. So I came out and asked them the direct question: "Are you going to be safe today?" And that was the right question to ask, and that got the conversation going into where we needed to go. Because as soon as I asked the question, "You're going to be okay today?" the answer was yes. When I asked the question, "Are you going to be safe today?" the conversation went a different way. And kind of thing that the mental health first aid training has given us Wellbeing Champions a bit more of an insight in the right things to ask, and not just, like you said before, just accept the first thing that comes out of your mouth.
And I really like what you're saying there, because what I'm noticing is that there's also what's involved is a sense of intuition from our part. When we actually really honestly engage in a conversation with someone, we get a sense of what would be a good question to ask, rather than how are you doing. It's a very, very open question that can sometimes be too open in order for people to answer. But in terms of some of our listeners, I think, I mean, I've seen your strategy. I had the pleasure to view it for the Wellbeing Award, and there is so much there. But if you were to give advice to another organization or another company, what would you say would be one of the most valuable things, one of the easiest things to implement? Or what would your advice be for someone to start out with?
Strategically, I think it's very important to believe in what you're doing, and that is extremely important, and to have buy-in. And it is very important to include everyone in the work staff from the word go, because it is essential that your staff feel part and parcel of this journey, and that they feel included. So I think that's probably one of the because going back to our earlier discussion, it was about changing culture, and it was about introducing better tools and methods to be able to look after our people better. But changing culture can be very challenging. But I think if you include people in that journey from the outset, it makes life so much easier. I mean, we're using a raft of different tools to support the Wellbeing Champions. We're using an app called Backup Buddy, which is helping both officers and support staff in the recognition of the risk to mental health that is associated with police work, and that's an excellent app that our officers have access to be able to go to it and say, you know, look at what I'm feeling and how I can be able to deal with what I'm going through. And then we've got an excellent working relationship with Oscar Kilo, which is a college policing organization that is supporting people in the policing service. So I think what people need to see is the buy-in, to be able to see that there's leadership from the outset, that there's a strategic direction to where we want to be. But have everything else in place to be able to support our people. And I leave before Darrien and Tom may want to add to that. I had a comment the other day from one of our eldest, our most oldest working employee in our organization. He's 70, or he's just gone 70, 71, 72 maybe, and he's been working in the military. He's worked with the MOD. He's worked with the government of Gibraltar, and he's currently part of our media team. And he said so something that the Wellbeing Champions and the committee came together with, but basically what they decided to do was to call everyone in the workforce. So all the champions were given a list of people to call, and just to see how people were doing, just a checkup, you know. And this guy received a phone call for the first time in his working career from someone who he didn't know, asking him how he was and whether he needed anything and how we could support him. And that for him was amazing. He just couldn't believe that was happening.
What a great story. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Certainly throughout COVID, and this was done particularly because of the challenges and added stresses that we all have due to COVID, and something as simple as that, and it is something that I personally practice as well with support staff, just a call. We have some people working from home, some people here struggling with their own personal situations, childcare, etc. So just that simple phone call and saying, how are you? How are you dealing with everything, juggling personal life, your professional as well. So it is, whereas the ultimate aim is changing a culture, that is huge. But I think you need to focus in those short-term wins with that ultimate aim of bringing about that major change. So, and in terms of coming back to the strategy again, it is a strategy that we launched and spans 3 years, but ultimately it is also very much a blueprint, but a working document. So we work with the Police Federation, with all staff as well. We've reconfigured internally and expanded our human resources department as well, because this does take quite a bit of work in terms of coordinating everything. But the key thing ultimately, as the Commissioner said, is that senior management buy-in, their acknowledgement of the benefit that this will bring to the whole force. Once you have that, then it's not plain sailing, but it definitely makes things much easier.
So the culture starts to change, doesn't it? When we, because what you're saying is that leadership and that buy-in is so important, and it starts with what we believe to be important and right, and who we are, and from there behaviors can change, and from there the whole culture shifts. So it's really clear how, you know, there's obviously been a very clear strategy, clear systems, etc., that you have put in place, but in terms of the overall roadmap, it's really been a how do you say, I'm missing the word right now,
Journey,
but a
top down,
and a natural progressive journey, so where it's evolved. That's the word I was looking for.
Right.
Not my English, not my first language, so I shall be excused. But there is something I want to, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I'd like to reiterate what the Commissioner said about the leadership side of things. I think what we found when we had the Wellbeing Champions, and what you've just said about this developing and being organic and growing, our Wellbeing Champions as they stand today aren't the same ones as we appointed a year ago. Some people found it wasn't for them, others wanted to be involved and came on board. So I think every organisation, and when your listeners are listening to this, the organisation may not know that these people are in their organisation, but there are people in every organisation, as there is within society, who want to help others and who want to go the extra little mile to help others. And they may be sitting in an organisation not doing anything because they don't know that the structure exists for them to do that, and they don't want to step on anyone's toes, overstep the mark, or be seen as a busybody. So when you get the leadership and the top end buy-in from senior management, and the processes are put in place, once you have those processes, the people are there. And I think people are there in just about every organisation. You just don't know they're there yet until you put those things in place. And that's how we've grown over time. And like I said, we have new wellbeing champions, and we have people who want to be wellbeing champions. And we're changing all the time in that respect. And it's got to keep growing. But the starting point for you said, what was the one thing that people needed? It is the leadership from the very top.
Leadership from the top. And it keeps growing and evolving. I have one more question. What I'm really curious about is what has changed? What do you see is different now from prior to having all of these elements implemented and the changing culture? What is different now within the RGP? But perhaps since you are so integrated into the community in Gibraltar, but perhaps also what's different beyond the RGP itself, the systems outside, the community as a whole, the families, people that, you know, your officers and your support staff are involved with. I know this is a really long question.
I mean, aligned to every, I mean, so the Royal Gibraltar Police is going through a journey in itself, and one of the things, we were inspected by Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabularies and Fire and Rescue Services in late 2019, and we got the report in 2020. And a lot of things have been done to improve the quality of service that we deliver to internally in the Royal Gibraltar Police, but also externally. So we've done a lot of work with regards to, for example, code of ethics, which talks about behaviours and what have you. And I think what we're trying to do here in this organisation is try to make the Royal Gibraltar Police a better place to be working in, make people happier. I mean, don't get me wrong, we make mistakes on a daily basis, and we need to keep on improving and learn from those mistakes. I think we're trying to change the organisation to being one of a learning organisation. We allow people to make mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes in our lives, as long as it's not mistakes which are, people who are doing it because they're being neglectful or anything like that. We won't tolerate that. But people who make a mistake based on the information that they have at the time, and they make a genuine decision, but maybe it's the wrong decision, as long as we learn from our mistakes, we move on, and we want to make sure that we change that culture as well. So everything goes hand in hand. So having a good code of ethics, a good organizational learning, improving the service that we deliver to the public of Gibraltar, but also improve the service internally. And then I think some of the benefits that we see today are that improved capacity in the organization. So the sickness levels being reduced, things like that are for us a little little signs that we appear to be getting right. But hey, this is like you said, a journey. It's an evolving journey, and we need to learn from it. We need to progress in it, and we need to keep on improving. So we will continue to make things better in the organization as we go along, and over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as long as it needs to happen.
It sounds like you have a fantastic team there that's pushing it forward and ensuring that it keeps evolving and being a co-creation where everyone's involved. So it's not a one person having to pull it all. To wrap it up, how would you, and perhaps we can have a word from each of you, how would you sum up your well-being strategy, your culture within the RGP? How would you sum it up in a couple of words?
If I go first, I would say that I would want to take this opportunity to thank the people in our organization, because without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I, as the lead of the organization, I am extremely grateful to the people of our organization, because they are so valuable, they are so determined, they're so committed. And with everything that we've been through over the past few months, particularly COVID, I'm really indebted to absolutely everything that they've done for us. So I think gratitude more than anything.
Gratitude. Wonderful.
I think this is, as has been mentioned previously, a journey that we've embarked on. It says a lot about the organization that whereas the pressures on the police operationally, that the police is willing and senior management is willing to go there and to deal with an issue such as this and ensuring the well-being of the staff. I think it says it all essentially. But it is important to acknowledge that it is a journey, that everybody needs to be involved and participate, and that it is a plan, a strategy for 3 years, which we're constantly reviewing and updating and improving.
From me, it really is about, it's a simple thing, it's about people. We have processes, but those processes are designed and created by people. It's about people caring from the very top to the very bottom, and having just people being really simple. And I know it may sound simple, but being kind to each other.
Wow. So gratitude, journey, and being kind. I think that it couldn't be summed up in any better way. So thank you very much to the three of you for taking the time to come onto this podcast and to talk to me about well-being. What you have done and implemented has been really outstanding and very inspiring, and hopefully this podcast will also inspire some other organizations in Gibraltar, perhaps even beyond, to put something in place and start somewhere. So I guess that's all it is about, is to make a start.
Thank you for listening to this episode of GibSams Wellbeing Podcasts, which I hope you have enjoyed. If you're interested in applying for one of our Wellbeing Recognition Awards, or would like our assistance in implementing a wellbeing strategy and building a culture of wellbeing at your place of work, please get in touch with us at wellbeing@gibsams.gi. Thank you once again for joining us.